Jalin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Since the time is short, so I think we should start it off straight away. This is an instructional course. In 1 hour or 1.5 hours, it's very difficult to cover the whole uveitis and its all the stigmata of the disease and the diagnosis and the treatment. And this course is going to be first of its kind. So there are still teething issues, and there's always a room for improvement for future courses to come, and we'll be able to design a better curriculum for this course and include more people so that we can have more knowledge and information flowing into the course. So now posterior uveitis is basically uveitis itself is basically a complex disease, and I'm not going to go into the pedagogist details of the disease. We all know what is anterior, posterior, intermediate, and all that. So, but the problem is that it needs a big discussion for its diagnosis, its treatment, and its and the treatment of the complications of it, and the treatment of the complications of the medications, especially the systemic that we give, because even the systemic medication given for uveitis, that also needs monitoring. You had to do a lot of blood tests, serial tests, and all that. So it's a big canvas. It's not a small ball game to play. So in posterior uveitis, the diseases that we mostly see are toxoplasmosis. These are the one which we commonly see. And then most of the chunk is of idiopathic, right on the bottom, and others like TB, sarcoidosis, and infective, and some we also see VKH disease in a few persons. These are the diseases which I have seen quite a number of times. The rest are also there: Behçet, serpiginous, toxocaria, and P, white dot syndromes, and syphilis, and all these mules, and these are all there. But these are the yellow ones, are the one which, at least in our area, or what I have actually come across most of the time. So in diagnosis, of course, we have to have clinical examination, not of the eye, but also the systemic clinical examination is very important in the diagnosis of and the history, the family history in certain cases like HLA related diseases and certain other things, and the clinical examination of the whole body. Actually, some of the diseases involve all the systems, so we have to do that. And usually uveitis is diagnosed clinically, and lab investigations are to be very rationalized, and they have to be very focused, and where we just confirm our diagnosis. Fundus pictures, OCTs, fundus angiograms, lab investigation, and other imaging like radiograms and other things, and other aids are required like vitreous tap, anterior tap, biopsies, and all that. So now the signs of the posterior uveitis are, as we see, there can be in vitreous, they can be in retina, fundus lesion vitreous. You see cells, flares, opacities, and in fundus, the lesions can be focal or can be multifocal, and they can be geographical in the later stages. And it all depends what you're seeing. Choroiditis is more concise, yellowish, whitish, cloudy lesions are those of when it is more of retinitis. Then there can be vasculitis. Once the lesion is healed, it's old, inactive, then it becomes an atrophic patch with pigmented margins. We can also see the involvement of the disc. Role of OCT is very important because it is not only for the confirmation of the diagnosis of the level of the posterior uveitis where it involves actually, but also monitoring and prognosis of the disease also. So because basically it's the central retina which is involved when the vision is lost and the patients come to you. So monitoring the central retina, its thickness, all that is very important to see how much is cystoid macular edema, or is there any choroidal neovascularization or any epiretinal membrane, or is there intraretinal or subretinal exudation, and what type of that. Then appearance of the lesions in choroiditis, the lesions appear as hyperreflective lesions between retinal pigment epithelium and the outer and the Bruch's membrane. And vitreous cells, they appear like flare or cells or cloud of sand in a muddy water when you see it. And retinal involvement can be appreciated in retinal layers, and I'll just show them. And with swept source OCT, of course, you can go deeper into the layers of the choriocapillaris, and you can really pinpoint the place where the lesion is. Now, this is just I've collected these few images from different places. Now, this shows a generalized total retinal involvement with lot of exudations and cellular deposits in almost all the layers. This is basically a retinitis, and with some retinal pigment epithelial involvement. Here it's more on the choroid side. The structural damage of retinal pigment epithelium you can see, and its deposit is here, and there is silence, ultrasonic silence, this silence on the back side because this is a deposit here. The retina is also involved, of course, with intraretinal edema and deposits. Here also retina is mainly involved, but the deposits are big. It looks like a granulomatous type of infective regions. Here you can see vasculitis with dilated vessel, and this is the dust, the vitreous dust or the vitreous cells in the posterior vitreous that we can see on OCT. And these are almost probably the blocked vessels, because with vasculitis there is tendency of vascular occlusion and then atrophy of the retina. This shows basically retinal pigment epithelial affection, and it is the epithelium which is retinal pigment epithelium which is mainly involved. The rest of the retinal layers appear good, but there are certain deposits, and there is an edema here, water collection. So this is how we can interpret certain. Now the lab test, everybody knows it's a long list everywhere. This is a short list that based on the history and clinical examination, you order the test accordingly. If there's a joint involvement, if there are ulcers on the body, or there's a history of mother carrying a disease and all that, and then you make a diagnosis, and then you order the serology test accordingly. You don't just give all the tests. No, they're very costly tests. Then high resolution CT scan is very good to point out posterior scleritis, which is not visible when we see through the eye to the fundus. So sometimes the choroiditis, which we see as choroiditis or effusion, is actually because of posterior scleritis here. And this is associated, of course, with certain HLA-related diseases. Now, this is just a run through of certain pictures that toxoplasmosis that we see in different stages. This is active headlight in the fog, and this is also active with inclusion of more area, and this is probably getting now treated or contained. Now, this is it's again on the resolving stage, and when it's fully resolved, then you can see punched out lesions with pigmentary margin, and it's typical. You can see the vessels running over it unscathed. Now, these are again the stages of the same disease. Toxoplasmosis is different here. The papilla is also involved, and if it's a systemic disease, then you can see this exanthem on the skin, the rash, the red rash. And if there is a reactivation of the lesion, then you start seeing some hemorrhage here, and you can see also necrotizing of the vessels and more hemorrhage here. Now, this is an old lesion with activity at the margin. Now, this is the OCT of the same that you see the actual place where it is happening. You can see edema here, and this is active disease, and this is active disease. You can see the posterior vitreous thickness, maybe some epiretinal membrane formation, and then the cells in the posterior vitreous, and there's activity all here. But once it is resolved, it becomes a punched out lesion, and you can see that the scan cannot go behind it. It's an opaque lesion because it doesn't go back. And this is en face OCT showing a punched out lesion with complete atrophy of the retina in this place. This is also retinal thinning and atrophy. So OCT helps to see the stage of the disease and its prognosis. Now, sarcoidosis is another disease of it's multi-system disease, and you can see active inflammation of the granuloma of the papilla and sheathing on the vessels. And here you can see on the papilla, you can see a big granulomata or granuloma here. Now, Behçet's disease or Behçet's disease, this is a very severe disease, involves multiple systems, skin and others, and you can see the exudation and sheathing of the blood vessels, more here, and there is an atrophic patch of the retina here. Now this is a distractor. Now this is Coats disease. It is not really an inflammatory disease. It's really not a uveitis, but it can resemble uveitis, that there is exudation and there is necrotizing sort of thing. Actually, these are cholesterol crystal deposits in the layers, but look like exudation and all that. And you can see it here on OCT as well. The rest of the retina is okay. There is no cellular deposit, retinal pigment epithelium, and these layers are fine here. But there are a lot of vascular changes and some aneurysmatic changes. So when we do the FA, so they light up like bulbs. So it's a typical that when fluorescent goes there, they just light up like bulbs. So this is because of it's a typical with this basic series. Toxocara, we all know there is a central granuloma or abscess and structural change with a fibrotic band running onto the papilla, and this is a typical feature of this. On OCT, we can see an active toxocaral inflammation with scarring here and deposition. This is probably healing stage. Now, Eales disease, it's periphlebitis, idiopathic, and in our parts we mostly see or related to the diabetes mellitus, and there is a vasculitis and necrotizing vasculitis with sheathing and hemorrhages, and here we can see that there are certain dropout areas also where because of this occlusion of the vessels. MP, acute multifocal placoid pigment epitheliopathy, is a deep inflammation. It is basically inflammation of the retinal pigment epithelium. That's why you can see that the vessels going over the lesions, there are multiple lesions, but the vessels going over the lesions, they are not disturbed. So it's a deep inflammation, and ultimately it turns out to be the retinal pigment epithelium gets atrophied and you get white dots. So it's one of the white dot syndromes or white dot diseases of the retina, in which we see others also. We'll come back to MP also after some time. This is coccidioidomycosis. There are discrete patches, and here is this is histoplasmosis with with scattered patches of inflammation. Acute hemorrhaging subretinal in histoplasmosis. Now, histoplasmosis is a disease which has got a typical triad in established case with a central macular scarring, peripapillary pigmentary changes, and some punched out lesions. One is white, and this is pigmented, but there can be fresh or hemorrhage where there is subretinal neovascularized membrane. You can see it. Now, this is again, can anybody tell what is this? What kind of inflammation? Or this one? Any guess? Nope. So this is again a distractor. It's a macroaneurysm which is throwing its exudation. It looks like that. And this is a retinal angioma of von Hippel-Lindau disease, in which there are feeding vessels, and this is an angioma. Well, another. Can anybody tell what could be this? It's a salmon patch in the periphery of the retina, sickle cell disease, and anything. Okay, this is METS. So salmon patch sometimes also can give you an metastatic bronchogenic carcinoma. It also gives like something, choroiditis or some deposit shape. So here, in such cases, you need other investigations like radiograms or OCT is a must to actually see what type of lesion is this. Now, this is again, they are also distracting lesions. Osseous choristoma is degenerating choroidal hemangioma. Well, it looks like a very severe inflammation, like something necrotizing and all that, but it's basically a degenerative disease and Coats disease. These are all pseudo-inflammatory or masquerading disease. Now, geographic choroiditis is also one of the white, or we can call it white dot, but it's not typically, but actually it is at the level, it's a deep inflammation at the level of the choriocapillaris and the outer layers of retina and retinal pigment epithelium. So it is a branching inflammation, and there are pigmentary wipeout areas actually. So it keeps on wiping out pigmentary layer, and there are etched out lesions. The lesions are etched as if they are dug deep. Etched lesions होते हैं इनके, and there we have this is angioid streak. This is not serpiginous choroiditis. So this is again a masquerade, but if you see closely, then you can find that there are breaks in the Bruch's membrane, and it's not an inflammatory disease. So Best disease, leukemia. In leukemia also you see hemorrhages with it looks like a Roth spot. It's a collection of lymphocytes, and this is posterior scleritis and effusion because of posterior scleritis. This also looks like an inflammatory disease, but it's not, of course. So I've just brought in other pictures also just to sarcoid papillitis, and they're active and resolving, and then syphilitic choroiditis. This is also seen quite often. The thing is, it has got patchy periphlebitis, and also it has got patches of inflammation. It's similar to the chancre, so it tends to produce patches, right? So there is a patch of retinitis or choroiditis here in syphilitic or lytic disease. So similarly, now go to the connective tissue disorders, which it's a big canvas actually, posterior uveitis. So if you go to a connective tissue disorder, then you find SLE, perivascular sheathing in SLE, and some necrotic and infarcts here and there. And this is polyarthritis nodosa. It's a very severe disease in which you see necrotizing vasculitis. And if the kidney is involved and there's a hypertension, then you can see the disc like this. It looks like a malignant hypertensive disease. So these just a magnifying of the sheathing, how the sheathing appears in SLE. BTH, we all know there is polyserous detachment at places. That's a very good picture, but there are areas. It's basically a T cell immune disorder in which the immunity is against the melanocytes or pigments. So it affects the retinal pigment epithelium mainly, and there is a multiple retinal serous detachments, and this is a big serous detachment, almost looking like a cloud of a fungus inflammation. But at the end, once it's settled, then you can see the papillary atrophy and the patches of pigment clumps here and there. This involves the hair also, the meninges also, and the ears also. The first symptom is sometimes tinnitus of this disease. Behçet's, already said, it's a multi-system disorder, but there is necrotizing vasculitis and hemorrhages leading to ultimately infarction of the retina, and almost a big part of the retina is infarct here. Acquired ocular tuberculosis is very common tuberculosis disease here, so we can have necrotizing areas, and this is a healed one. The same patient after TB treatment, you get the good thing is that you can heal this disease. Serpiginous choroiditis, as I already mentioned, it's a deep layer disease. Yes, on FA, then you can see that there is a lot of agitation and pigmentary wipeout areas also at places. NP, I've already talked, it looks subtle here, but when you see on FA, there's a lot of areas involved, and the retinal pigment epithelium is a lot of it is involved here. Birdshot is one of the white syndrome. There are patchy choroiditis, and ultimately, once the pigment epithelium is infarcted or it's it's damaged, then you have the white spots like a birdshot. Fungal infections. It's again a big arena in which you can see the vasculitis, aspergillosis, hemorrhages, dropout areas, a lot of agitation, and this is a fungus ball. Candida also gives a fungal puff here, but with treatment, slowly it improves. The same patient has improved here to a great extent with amphotericin and other treatment. Now, this is the last slide. Multiple sclerosis also we we never do OCTs in usually in patients of MS. They are sometimes even not referred to us. But if you do, they do have a uveitis, deep retinal exudation and edema, and you can see like that. And you have stigmata on MRI also. These are white streak demyelinating patches here and there, and you have deep retinal. And this they get better with steroid treatment. So mostly they get better with steroid treatment. So this was a very sketchy and a very small presentation actually, not covering everything, but of course, we have to take more time to take each. This was just an overview of something we posted. I've left many topics in them, many diseases, of course, like PORN, BAR, ARN, and so many things, viral disease, post-romal disease, post-viral disease, but makes the canvas very big. So this was just, now may I invite the next speaker to please come and share the ideas with us.
Thank you, Dr. Shakib. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Uh, I'm going to particularly talk on infectious uveitis, which can lead to a significant visual impairment if not managed promptly and appropriately. I will also discuss how we can diagnose infectious causes of uveitis clinically, as we all know that sometimes it's very difficult to go for the long list of the investigations. So, in the United States, infectious uveitis accounts for approximately 15 to 20% of all uveitic cases. But if we see globally, this proportion is significantly higher, particularly in regions with the high prevalence of the infections like tuberculosis, syphilis, toxoplasmosis, and other infections. So, the infectious uveitis can affect both immunosuppressed and immunocompetent individuals. Uh, this is the case of 24-year-old girl who presented with loss of vision in her left eye. She first visited a general ophthalmologist clinic about 3 weeks ago, where she was diagnosed with conjunctivitis. Uh, Later, 2 weeks ago, she again evaluated by another general ophthalmologist who diagnosed her with iritis. But unfortunately, the dilated fundus examination was not done at that visit. Just one day before visiting our clinic, she was seen by a retina specialist who dilated and subsequently referred her to uveitic clinic for further evaluation. This is an ultra wide field image of the left eye retina taken with an Optos. The image reveals a diffuse haziness due to vitritis, the peripheral yellow-white necrotic areas, few hemorrhages, retinal detachment, and pigmentary changes. So, since the patient was completely immunocompetent with no history of suggestive of any immunocompromised state. So, my top differential diagnosis was acute retinal necrosis. ARN is typically caused by either the herpes simplex virus or the varicella zoster virus. Patients are generally immunocompetent, but this disease can also affect the immunocompromised individuals. ARN is typically present with one or more small patchy yellow-white necrotic areas accompanied by obliterative vasculitis, which is the hallmark of the disease. Sorry. These areas have discrete borders and usually begin at the equator of the retina. They can expand and coalesce rapidly. The diagnosis of ARN is primarily clinical based on the characteristic findings observed during the examination. However, the confirmatory testing is crucial. PCR testing for herpes simplex, varicella zoster, or toxo is often performed to identify the specific causative pathogens. The recommended treatment for ARN begins with the intravenous acyclovir, which is followed by oral maintenance therapy with 800 milligram taken 5 times daily for 6 weeks. It is important to treat it promptly because without treatment, the second eye can become involved in 20 to 70% cases within 1 month. So we have various options for antiviral, but the question arises, how should we manage such significant inflammation? It is advisable to consider adding oral steroids, ideally around 2 days after initiating the antiviral therapy. Here we have another case of recently diagnosed HIV positive patient who was referred to us by infectious disease specialist. The patient has experiencing bilateral blurriness for the past 3 weeks. The key point to note is the patient's CD4 count, which is critically low at just 10 cells per cubic millimeter. This is the fundus photograph reflecting, sorry, excuse me. So this is the fundus photograph showing multiple necrotic areas with macular thickening, showing macular edema. And you can also appreciate multiple hemorrhages, retinal hemorrhages. Another case of a 10-year-old boy who is a known case of acute myeloid leukemia, who has undergone a bone marrow transplant. The fundus photograph shows here reveals significant findings. This is an extensive view of the retina, revealing a typical brush fire appearance of the characterized by flame-shaped hemorrhages radiating from the optic disc and spreading across the retina. This pattern is often associated with severe retinal ischemia and inflammation. So this was a clinical diagnosis of CMV retinitis. CMV retinitis was the most common infection among patients with severely compromised immune system, particularly those with the low CD4 T cell count. However, with the introduction of HART therapy, there has been a dramatic improvement. Moving on to the treatment option, the cornerstone of the treatment is HART therapy, which primarily focuses on controlling the HIV. In addition to HART therapy, specific antiviral medications are used to directly treat the infection, like ganciclovir or its oral product, valganciclovir. Another case of a 32-year-old male who has been referred to us for chronic anterior uveitis in both eyes. This is a very interesting case. It is important to note that the patient has had multiple sexual partners, which is a relevant detail as it may indicate potential risk factors. Despite this, his review of system is completely normal. During ocular examination, we found a few cells and there was no flare in the AC. When we look at the fundus, everything seems almost normal, which makes it hard to understand why the patient is having a decline in the vision. So on further investigations, we did OCT, autofluorescence, and fundus fluorescein angiography. Here we can see a mild disruption in the ISOS and few spots here. So the autofluorescent images reveal hyper and hypoautofluorescent spots at macula, likely secondary to some chronic inflammation. But when we did the FFA, the pattern is quite typical of placoid chorioretinopathy, a condition that is associated with syphilitic infection. So on further workup, it was revealed that he is VDRL positive and HIV positive. This is significant because there is a high rate of co-infection between HIV and syphilis. When considering the clinical diagnosis, it is crucial to always include syphilis in the differential diagnosis of all uveitis cases, especially given the patient's background and test results. One of the key diagnostic clues can be the distinctive pattern seen in the posterior pole, like placoid chorioretinopathy, which is observed in this particular patient. Talking about the treatment for ocular syphilis, always refer the patient to ID specialist to start the penicillin, or alternative in the case of penicillin allergy. Additionally, systemic steroids may be considered in certain cases when there is vision threatening condition. This is the case of a 39-year-old female who presented with decreased vision in her left eye for nearly a year. She was referred to us by general ophthalmologist. Her visual acuity was reduced to counting finger in the left eye. Upon examination, there was a notable presence of diffuse vitreous cells and vitreous debris, suggesting ongoing inflammation. You can also appreciate retinal detachment inferiorly. So basically, on systemic workup, her toxo IgM antibodies came out positive. Again, it's a clinical diagnosis supported by labs seropositivity. This is not a very particular typical picture of toxo. क्योंकि उसको ऑलरेडी स्टीरॉइड्स एडमिनिस्टर किए जा चुके थे, कॉम्प्लिकेशंस डेवलप हो गई थी, तो दिस इज वेरी नॉट अ वेरी टिपिकल पिक्चर ऑफ टॉक्सो. So basically, on systemic workup, as we all are aware, treating toxo infection is well established and straightforward. But what I would like to emphasize here, if there is a significant inflammatory response with vitritis, one should introduce oral steroids a few days after starting the antibiotic therapy. So steroids themselves are not contraindicated in toxo, but unchecked steroids are always contraindicated, especially the local administration like Subtenon or retrobulbar. So this gentleman came to me with this condition, and I advised him to get a complete workup done, including the TB testing. However, he became upset, asking if I thought he might have TB. So he went to another ophthalmologist who put him on steroids. Unfortunately, his condition worsened. After a few months, he returned to me in this state. I again asked him to go for the TB testing, which came out positive. And while the inflammation subsided, the prognosis was not good. So the key takeaway here is don't just treat the inflammation, address the infection first. So in conclusion, it is crucial to always consider infectious etiologies when evaluating the patient of ocular inflammation before starting the steroids. Make sure that infectious diseases are always ruled out. If a patient's condition is worsened while on steroids, stop the treatment immediately and reevaluate the patient. In cases of unilateral severe vitritis, always consider ARN and toxo. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Dr. Sohaib Asmule, and I have special interest in uveitis. So today we are going to talk about treatment modalities in non-infectious uveitis. What's after steroids? This is a topic of specific interest when it comes to ophthalmologists, and I've seen most of the ophthalmologists when they talk to me, they're talking about non-infectious uveitis and how to treat when you don't want to give steroids. So our goals in uveitis are, first of all, to eliminate inflammation, control the acute activity, stop the chronic activity, and for having the disease in remission, and to avoid structural complications. But what I've seen is that at most of the times we're treating the ocular complications as a result of uveitis, so might as well just avoid them so that there is lesser structural damage. And to prevent visual loss, obviously, along with minimizing the potential systemic side effects of these medications. So our therapeutic approach in such cases is, first of all, to establish diagnosis. Diagnosis में हमने सबसे पहले infection और malignancy rule out करनी है. This is extremely important. Malignancy is also pretty common. जो masquerading syndromes हैं, they are also very common. जैसे सर ने अभी हमें explain किया था. तो इन्फेक्शन रूल आउट करने के बाद, मेलिग्नेंसी रूल आउट करने के बाद, वी नीड टू गिव देम एंटीमाइक्रोबियल थेरेपी इफ इट इज इन्फेक्शियस, एंड वी need to have disease specific indications for a specific treatment. It's not just steroids. हर तरह की different entity को हम different तरह से approach करते हैं. So that's why diagnosis is very 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 important ताकि उनको early on हम एक specific treatment start कर दें. For this we use a step ladder algorithm. So my main focus would be around here to talk about the immunomodulation therapy and the biologics and the JAK inhibitors that are relatively new in the treatment of uveitis. So our wish is basically one size fits all. This is not typhoid that XYZ drug PT 500 mg 2 weeks सबको देते जाएं. What I have seen is कि एक ही disease entity presents differently in two patients. Same disease presents differently in two different eyes, and at different points in time. 2012 में किसी और तरह present करेगा patients. But 2017 का flare उसको किसी और तरह होगा, किसी और तरह से वो उसको respond करेगा. So this is what we want, but that's not possible. So route and choice of medication depends on these factors. Location क्या है, laterality क्या है, complications क्या हो चुकी हैं, किस medication को वो patient accept कर सकता है. Next, this is a general chart that I devised कि कौन से uveitis में according to the site हम कौन सी medication दे सकते हैं. For example, anterior we can control with topical, but GI में शुरू से ही हमें immunomodulation therapy देनी है for such patients. Okay, so my main topic starts basically here. It's immunomodulation therapy or immunosuppressive therapy or steroid sparing therapy. Up to 15 to 20% of uveitis patients उन्हें immunomodulation therapy की ज़रूरत पड़ेगी, जो भी autoimmune uveitis वाले patients हैं. और उनमें किस को हमने देना है immunomodulation therapy. We should know early on ताकि steroid देने में time ना ज़ाया करें, patient का benefit हो जाएगा. तो इसके लिए कुछ guidelines हैं which were devised by Steve Jabs and Foster. So किस को देना है? Systemic steroids have failed. 2 हफ्ते में कोई रिस्पॉन्स नहीं आया विद हाई डोज ओरल स्टेरॉइड, या फिर देयर इज स्टिल इन्फ्लेमेशन आफ्टर 4 वीक्स, ये है तो यू हैव टू स्विच टू इम्यूनोमॉड्यूलेशन थेरेपी. या ऐसा पेशेंट हु नीड्स स्टेरॉइड्स ऑफ अ डोज मोर देन 7.5 mg फॉर मोर देन 3 months, 7.5 mg ज्यादा जिसको चाहिए उसको आपने स्टेरॉइड से हटाना है, क्योंकि 7.5 mg ऑफ स्टेरॉइड इज इम्यूनोसप्रेसिव डोज. इससे कम जो है वो एंटी इन्फ्लेमेटरी हो सकती है, इट्स नॉट इम्यूनोसप्रेसिव. or some diseases which are known to be poorly responsive to steroids or patients with side effects of steroids. Achha, another thing, this is a problem that I've come across कि एक पेशेंट है उसको आप एक साल में कितने इंजेक्शन लगा सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल इट्स अ यूनिलैटरल uveitis, आप उसको कितने सबटेनॉल लगाएंगे, आप उसको कितने सुप्राक्रोइडल लगाएंगे. सो व्हाट आई हैव सीन इन माय प्रैक्टिस और जो थोड़ा बहुत मेरा तजर्बा है उसमें कि अगर इफ पेशेंट नीड्स अ थर्ड इंजेक्शन इन 1 year, better switch that patient to immunosuppressive therapy, क्योंकि वो दूसरे तीसरे साल के बाद इन्फेक्शंस की वजह से उसको इंजेक्शन की वजह से इतनी कॉम्प्लिकेशंस हो जाएंगी कि विल बी लाइक कि नहीं इट्स बेटर, ग्लाकोमा हो जाएगा, उसको कैटरैक्ट डेवलप हो जाएगा, विट्रस के प्रॉब्लम्स होना, ERM डेवलप होना शुरू हो जाएगी. प्लस देयर इज अनदर थिंग कॉल्ड सॉटूथ पैटर्न ऑफ इन्फ्लेमेशन. अ पेशेंट हैज यूनिलैटरल पार्सप्लेनाइटिस, आप उसको इंजेक्शन लगाते हैं हर साल के बाद, ही गेट्स एन एनुअल इंजेक्शन, so you're pretty happy with that. But हो ये रहा है कि उसकी after every spike of inflammation you're giving him steroid, तो उसकी sawtooth pattern inflammation की वजह से उसकी vision आहिस्ता decline करती जा रही है. तो ऐसे पेशेंट के लिए भी आपने सोचना है कि I have to switch this patient to immunosuppressive therapy. Now जो commonly IMTs हैं उसके अंदर एंटी मेटाबोलाइट्स हैं, कैल्शियन्यूरिन इनहिबिटर्स और एल्काइलेटिक एजेंट. आई वोंट टॉक अबाउट ऑल, बहुत एक एक्सटेंसिव टॉक हो जाएगी. तो जो कॉमन है उनके हम सीधा उनके पॉइंट्स हम डिस्कस कर लेंगे एंड वी विल मूव फॉरवर्ड. Even the mechanism of action, I don't think this is very interesting at this stage. Which patients need immunomodulation therapy? Upon the diagnosis of these diseases, patients को उसी वक्त immunomodulation therapy पे हमें start कर देना चाहिए. Behçet's है, serpiginous है, SO है, necrotizing scleritis है, pemphigoid है, Wegener's है. इसी तरह PKH, multifocal choroiditis, these patients, steroids is the first line, लेकिन they have to be switched to immunomodulation therapy nevertheless. This disease absolutely cannot be controlled by steroids. Side study एक काफी बड़ी extensive study थी, उसमें single drug efficacy को study किया गया था. तो as you can see here, mycophenolate and cyclophosphamide इनमें inactivity maximum cases में थी, और उसके बाद methotrexate falls there. Methotrexate is my basically first choice because ये relatively cheap है, once a week लेनी होती है, आसानी से manage होती है, इतने side effects नहीं है जितने बाकी medications के हैं. So this is another data from another study. So talking about methotrexate basically DHFR को inhibit करती है ठीक है, और इसकी 2.5 और 10 mg के अंदर आती है। ये वंस अ वीक लेनी होती है। वी स्टार्ट ऑफ एट 10 mg, वी कैन मैक्सिमम गो अप टू 25 mg पर वीक। इसके साथ हमने फॉलिक एसिड ऐड करना है, नॉट टू बी टेकन ऑन द डे ऑफ मेथोट्रेक्सेट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन। पेशेंट, मैं यूजुअली कहता हूँ सैटरडे नाइट को ले ले, ताकि जो भी उसको गैस्ट्रिक अपसेट्स होने हैं वो रात को उतने, सुबह उठे तो वो फ्रेश हो। साइड इफेक्ट्स उसके अंदर कौन कौन से होते हैं? हेपेटोटॉक्सिसिटी, साइटोपेनियाज, इन्फेक्शन हो सकते हैं। इट्स अ वेरी पोटेंट टेरेटोजन। इसके अलावा जो लैब्स हमने करवानी है, CBC, LFT, RFT, और वी हैव टू रूल आउट TB, hepatitis B and C. We have to rule out these infections, and then we keep an eye on CBC, LFT, RFT every 4 weeks for the first 6 months, और फिर 6 to 8 weeks पे हम उसको आहिस्ता आहिस्ता शिफ्ट कर देते हैं। नेक्स्ट इज माइक्रोफेनोलेट, सेलसेप्ट के नाम से आती है। इसकी डोजेज जो है वो BD में होती है, रोजाना लेनी होती है। सो इट्स 2 डिवाइडेड डोजेस के अंदर होती है, 500 mg या 1 ग्राम या 1.5 ग्राम BD के अंदर हम ये पेशेंट्स को देते हैं। इसकी भी सेम साइड इफेक्ट्स हैं, मोर और लेस इसको हम उसी तरह देख रहे हैं, बिकॉज इट्स फ्रॉम द सेम फैमिली। नेक्स्ट इज साइक्लोस्पोरिन, कैल्सिनोरिन इनहिबिटर है। इट्स अ नेचुरल प्रोडक्ट ऑफ फंगस। इसकी ओरल एब्जॉर्प्शन वेरी करती है। जो माइक्रो इमल्शन है उसकी, इट हैज बेटर बायोअवेलेबिलिटी कंपेयर टू द सैंडिम्यून। आई डोंट थिंक दैट वी हैव दिस अवेलेबल इन पाकिस्तान, क्योंकि ये भी बड़ी मुश्किल से मिल रही होती है। जो इनका जेलेटिन कैप्सूल है, वो उसकी भी अक्सर अवेलेबिलिटी का मसला बना होता है। इफ आई हैव टू गिव सम पेशेंट लेट्स 200 mg, तो वो 4 25 mg के कैप्सूल जो है वो ले रहा होता है वो वाला पेशेंट। Sorry, last thing. Cyclosporin, we have to give them in 2 divided doses on 1 day. So हमने equally divide करना होता है. It cannot be given in a single oral dose. इसके same side effects हैं. एक बहुत important इसका side effect है, that is hypertension. A lot of patients जो cyclosporin ले रहे होते हैं in multiple centers, multiple hospitals, उनका blood pressure नहीं check हो रहा था. I've seen multiple patients आए हैं, blood pressure, young patient है, 24 साल उम्र है उसकी, blood pressure 180 पे गया हुआ है. We have to keep that thing under check. Next is cyclophosphamide. ये oral और injectable form दोनों में आती है, but it's a very dangerous drug. I'm very scared of this drug. So इसके लिए I don't administer it at my hospital. इसके लिए मैंने rheumatology की help ली हुई है। तो rheumatology का एक I don't know if you guys are aware or not, FMH के अंदर एक काफ़ी अच्छा setup था. Now that team has moved to Central Park Teaching Hospital. मेरी उनके साथ बहुत अच्छा liaison है, तो वहाँ पर जाके patients लगवा लेते हैं if affordability is an issue for them. Endoxing के नाम से आती है 1 to 3 mg per kg. It is given either 2 weekly or monthly, and this is we can say कि immunomodulation therapy में हमारी last में हम इसको रखते हैं, क्योंकि इसके hemorrhagic cystitis के काफ़ी ज़्यादा इसके है, apart from all other side effects. immunomodulation therapy इसमें hemorrhagic cystitis काफ़ी common होता है, so we ask the patients कि बहुत ज़्यादा पानी इस्तेमाल करता रहे. This is a quick glance at all these 4 drugs that we just discussed. These are the labs that we want to get done before we start the immunomodulation therapy. Now, biologics. Biologicals medications, basically they are biologic response modifiers. These are monoclonal antibodies, or if it is derived from only a human source, so it ends with UMAB. लेकिन अगर इसका chimeric source है murine, यानी mice and human both, तो then it ends with ZMAB. Or if it's a fusion protein, so it's CEP. So basically, we're already using monoclonal antibodies in our practice, ophthalmologists, जो कि anti-VEGF के तौर पे हम use करते हैं. Drug development में there's been a lot of drug development in terms of biologics. As you can see, ये FDA का chart है, and you can see कि सबसे ज़्यादा oncology और autoimmune disease के अंदर उन्होंने development की है for monoclonal antibodies. ये सिर्फ monoclonal antibodies हैं. There probably 18 में से half of them are FDA approved. Others are not, कुछ approve होके cancel हो गए because of their adverse side effects. Biologics के अंदर there are multiple modes of action. TNF alpha inhibitors भी हैं, lymphocyte inhibitors भी हैं, and receptor antagonists भी हैं. Most of the time we are only using TNF alpha inhibitors, and that to infliximab and adalimumab, क्योंकि जो बाकी जितनी भी medications हैं उनका specific response organ transplant या किसी और lymphoma में हो सकता है, but not for uveitis, not very good for uveitis. So what is TNF alpha? It's a master cytokine. It's found in aqueous and blood in a uveitic eye. So we have to target this. the first drug is adalimumab. It's a humanized monoclonal antibody. ये subcutaneously available है. FDA approved this in 2002 और जो इसका developer था, he got a Nobel Prize for that because it was such a wonder drug. It's administered subcutaneously or 40 mg subcut every 2 weeks. Monoclonal antibodies usually उनकी half life is 2 weeks. तो शुरू के 1 साल तक हम उसको 2 weekly रखते हैं, फिर हम उसको 3 weekly या 1 monthly या 6 weekly पे shift कर सकते हैं. लोडिंग डोज 80 mg की हम पेशेंट को देते हैं. ये these are easily available. Humira was launched by Abbott, जो एबवी बन गई थी बाद में. पाकिस्तान में पहले आती थी टर्की से और इंडिया से स्मगल होके. उसके बाद ये जब इसकी स्मगलिंग बन हुई तो साइनो आरे आना शुरू हो गई. साइनो आरे ईरान से स्मगल होके आ रही थी, लेकिन अब सर्ल ने डेलीमैब लॉन्च कर दिया है 6 months ago. तो ये तो सबक्यूटेनियस इंजेक्शंस हैं. जो ह्यूमेरा का पेन आ रहा था वो तो एपी पेन की तरह का था. इट वाज अ क्लिक और वो पेशेंट खुद भी एडमिनिस्टर कर सकते. मोस्ट ऑफ द पेशेंट्स दे एडमिनिस्टर इट देमसेल्फ. Then we have infliximab. It's a chimeric and what this portion is derived from mice, this from humans. इसकी more or less उसी तरह से डोज होती है हमारी every 2 to 4 weekly. When we're giving infliximab to patients, so the body can develop autoantibodies against infliximab. So we never use infliximab alone. We always add Cellsapt or methotrexate with it ताकि body आपकी immunosuppressed state के अंदर रहे. Infliximab found in subcutaneous form and as infusion. 2 to 4 weekly लगता है. ये बना बंद हो गया पाकिस्तान में. Remsima is still available. इनके टिपिकली साइड इफेक्ट्स हैं जो ऑटोइम्यून ड्रग्स के होते हैं, लेकिन इसके अंदर आई वांट टू पॉइंट आउट demyelinating disease. Pretty common. I had a patient, I want to share this experience. She had an only eye, 20/100 vision थी. She was on immunosuppressive therapy for a good amount of 5 years. So जब adalimumab पे शिफ्ट किया तो 6 माह पे she developed optic disc pallor. तो we found out कि उसकी demyelination हो रही है because of adalimumab. पहले हमें लगा शायद inflammation एक्टिव हो रही है, लेकिन फिर then we figured out कि नहीं, it's because of when we stopped that और उसको फिर optic test मैंने start कराई, उसको neurologist को हमने दिखाया तो वो in 2 to 3 months it settled. So we were obviously very concerned. Only I 30-year-old young female. Next, whenever we are giving out biologics, एक तो basic infection test करने हैं, underlying कोई immunocompromise या malignancy है उसको rule out करने, plus the patient needs to be up to date on their vaccinations, which हम Influvac और Prevnar, we need to make sure the patient is up to date on these vaccinations. This is a quick glance on what we just discussed. I'm not going to go into the details because it's a very busy slide. Next, JAK-STAT inhibitors. JAK basically janus kinase cytokine signaling में use होती है, तो ये autoimmune disease के अंदर बहुत active होती है. And STAT stands for signal transducers and activators of transcription. So basically we are blocking this specific pathway. Or the good thing about JAK-STAT inhibitors is कि orally available है. So tofacitinib है वो हम use कर रहे हैं for uveitis. 5 to 10 mg it is given in a BD dose. But the thing is कि TOF-JAK is I'm pretty scared of it. ये अगर अकेले आप देंगे तो you need to have rheumatology. You need to have a rheumatology cover with all of these medications. But ये relatively because नहीं है तो that's why इसको थोड़ा सा हम एहतियात से यूज करते हैं. ऐसा कोई पेशेंट नहीं है इस वक्त मेरे पास जो कि सिर्फ यूवेटिस के लिए ये यूज कर रहा हो. So ऐसे पेशेंट्स हैं जो रूमेटोलॉजी देख रहे हैं, somebody has actually B27, somebody has RA, उनके लिए वो ले रहे हैं तो उसमें यूवेटिस भी कवर हो रहा है. So अभी ये obviously FDA तो अप्रूव, इनमें से कोई भी बायोलॉजिक्स या JAK-STAT inhibitors अभी कोई भी अप्रूव नहीं है. नेक्स्ट इनके एडवर्स इफेक्ट्स वही सेम हैं, लेकिन दो चीज़ें जो which I want to mention is cholesterol level can be elevated or blood CPK can also rise in such patients. Same labs that need to be done. This is the last slide. This is something which I found interesting तो मेरा था मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूँ. Sandoz जो कि it's a part of Novartis, तो इनके जब भी employees जाते थे वेकेशन पे तो they would collect soil samples from everywhere ताकि उधर से जो भी फंगस वगैरह आ रही है उस पर वो रिसर्च कर सकें. तो 1970 के अंदर विस्कॉन्सिन और नॉर्वे से उन्हें जो कुछ ऐसे फंगाई मिले जिसके अंदर से साइक्लोपेप्टाइड्स निकले थे, एंड इट गेव राइज टू द ड्रग साइक्लोस्पोरिन व्हिच चेंज्ड transplant medication. Basically transplantation was not possible without cyclosporin, or it was basically discovered by people who were vacationing. So this is something which I found interesting and wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? Thank you. moderator of this session. Any question that anybody might have regarding this, sir? Sir. Not for uveitis. Not for uveitis. Not for uveitis.
In literature it is reported that is quite effective. I found it is ineffective. I have
नहीं sir,
injected
not for
multiple
this.
patients.
Not for uveitis. PVR के लिए कुछ यूज कर रहे हैं for rheumatologist detachment
Second
के लिए.
question regarding systemic nitho, उसको when should we taper off? Start tapering it off or should we stop it
नहीं
once
sir,
for all or should we taper it off?
methotrexate जी sir, methotrexate at least 24 months तो चलेगी. Some patients are taking methotrexate for 4 or 5 years up.
So
4-5 साल से उसमें हैं, हम उनके सारे पैरामीटर्स मॉनिटर कर रहे हैं, वो शूट कर रही है. Not a low dose, intermediate dose 15 mg weekly पे they are doing great. खासतौर most of the patients are such okay, they have an only eye. So we cannot absolutely take a risk of reducing immunosuppression for such patients. तो 25 पे गए थे, 15 पे आ जाएंगे, 6 महीने 15 पे रहेगा. देखेंगे पेशेंट, ऐसे पेशेंट्स बहुत ज़्यादा वो हो जाते हैं, दे आर वेरी कॉशियस. वो कहते हैं अब फ्लोटर्स आना शुरू, कुछ हो रहा है, कुछ भी नहीं, हमें कुछ भी नहीं, क्लिनिकली नहीं, विजन इज 6x के लिए कुछ हो रहा है. वो I trust their judgment as well. OCD भी ठीक
problem I
होगा.
face के when should we stop? Because after 6 months or 1 year, if the eye is
नहीं,
quite
sir, I think methotrexate at least immunosuppressive therapy at least 18 to 24 months देनी चाहिए.
and after that if the eye is quite
If the eye is good, you can taper it, or
Taper it
usually a remission, the eye stays in remission for 5 to 6 years. Allah khair करे, बाकी तो
and
every
during this
disease.
time you repeat the labs after every month.
For the first 6 months labs हमने
Monthly.
CBC, LFT, RFT करवाने, इसके अलावा यूरिनरी एल्ब्यूमिन भी करवा लेते हैं. और हम रूमेटोलॉजी की बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्प लेते हैं. जो रूमेटोलॉजी का ग्रुप है, I studied from FMH, so they are like friends. They were my seniors, तो हम लोग उनके साथ बड़ा अच्छा कोऑर्डिनेशन हो रहा है.
Thank you.
Sir.
Case of young man, 20 years old, resident of Punjab University hostels.
Sir.
He came to us with blurring of vision
Sir.
and was being treated at the periphery by giving a topical steroids. But when we looked for the posterior segment, there were a lot of vitreous cells.
Sir.
And astonishing was the bilateral papilledema. So we investigated him throughout whole OCTs, even our colleagues referred के इसका आपने CT या MRI कराएं. MRI भी हमने कराया. There was no finding at all. All the things were normal.
Sir,
So with the
papilledema-
collaboration of our, because you already mentioned, still the Department of Rheumatology is very strong.
Sir.
Please, still the department is very strong. तो वो फिर उन्हें उनके लिजॉन से हमने शुरू किया ट्रीटमेंट. They have started methotrexate और मैंने उसको फिर posterior subtenon दिया.
Sir.
The posterior subtenon or along with the methotrexate, he responded well. मेरा क्वेश्चन क्या है? मेरा क्वेश्चन है, is there any condition which you can elaborate with no other finding, TB, CB, AIDS, syphilis, सब चीज हमने उसको negate किया. What is the probable cause of bilateral papilledema in case of posterior uveitis?
Sir.
जस्ट टू करेक्टेड बताएंगे नहीं आप. एक तो यह है कि अगर आपको कोई इंट्राक्रेनियल एमआरआई में कोई चीज़ नहीं आई तो यू डोंट कॉल इट पेपल एडीमा बाय डेफिनेशन. या बायलैटरल डिस्क एडीमा, ठीक है. और बायलैटरल डिस्क एडीमा couldn't be the granulomata of sarcoidosis or something which are affecting that is.
सर इसमें नेक्स्ट सेशन शुरू हो रहा है. सर वेरी सॉरी, दिस विल बी माय लास्ट स्टेटमेंट. एट टाइम्स हम जब कहते हैं कि व्हाट कैन बी द कॉज, मैं अक्सर ये कहता हूँ कि एक पेशेंट है, बच्चा है, उसको यूवीआइटिस है, हमने कहा इडियोपैथिक यूवीआइटिस है, लेकिन उसका एएनए पॉजिटिव आ जाता है, जॉइंट्स इन्वॉल्व हो जाते हैं, तो फिर हम कहते हैं अब यूवीआइटिस इडियोपैथिक नहीं है, लेकिन अब इसको जुवेनाइल इडियोपैथिक आर्थराइटिस है. आपके सारे यूवीआइटिक एंटिटीज ये सारी इडियोपैथिक सर्पिजिनस की वजह से हो रहा है, जस्ट बिकॉज वी हैव नेम्ड इट. तो वो तो मेरा ये कि इफ इट्स अनडिटरमिन्ड तो इट्स अनडिटरमिन्ड, इट्स ऑटोइम्यून. सर sir, a lot of cases like this, so they respond. Sir, autoimmune. I've seen disc edema with anterior uveitis as well, so thank you.
More than 50% they don't have any cause, but you treat with corticosteroids or cytotoxic drugs.